Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video. Today guys, I'm bringing you back a classic build from a long time ago, one that many people wouldn't think would return with any update, and that is the Sap tank. It's one of the most classic reliable builds pretty much ever made back in the day, and it's actually really good even today. So we're going to go ahead and jump into it by looking at what it is. So this is the Sap Tank Nightblade tank build. It is an Argonian Nightblade. Argonian is one of the better races for this build, mainly because of their 6% healing done. Their health, stamina, and magicka pools really play into it really well as well. So it's really up to the player or the person playing the build to determine what race is best, though. Everyone's going to have their own opinion. Some people are going to think the Nord might be better. Some people are going to think the Imperial might be better. But after playing it, play testing with it and everything, Argonian, in my opinion, came out to be the better race for its choice. Now, again, other races can play this build. They're not going to have the effectiveness of the Argonian's healing capability. So, but other than that, let's go ahead and get into it. So as you can see, our max magicka, we have 25 points in there for the Argonian with 14 health and 25 in the stamina. This gives us a 26k magicka pool, 40k health pool, and a 26k stamina pool. We do have 1390 mag recovery with a 988 stamina recovery. Don't worry too much about the stamina and health recovery. Those aren't as necessary as the mag recovery, and you'll find out why later. So, spell damage is coming in at 2509. Weapon damage is coming in at 3089. We do have really good spell and physical penetration with the build. We have 5313 spell with a 4374 physical. Spell resistance is coming at 20,000, 19,000 physical resistance, and that is unbuffed. But I'm going to go ahead and buff it up just so you can see. Oops. For yourselves. So this is what the resistances look like buffed up. 23, 22. Not a big difference, to be honest, but that's okay. You can actually get more out of the build than that when it comes to resistances, and I don't know why it's so low. But that's okay. You can get a little bit more out of the build, depending on like what champion point setup you go with. So. Looking at our advanced stats here, you can see our block cost is 897. It's not too bad. A lot of people might complain it's too high, but it actually works out really well. Our dodge roll cost is 3940. That's where we get that, and break free is where we have a lot of resource draw. So you got to be kind of careful with those kind of things. And then down here you can see our fire, shock, frost, magic, disease, poison, and bleed resist is actually pretty well for a build like this. So, alright. We are running the Atronach Munda Stone for the mag recovery. We do have a tri-stat food. And then moving on to our gear. Starting with our... We're going to go through the monster set first, and then, or through the sets first. Then we're going to look at the enchants, then the traits, and then the armor type, and then we're going to go through the rest of it, the jewelry and weapons. So, starting with the monster set, we are running Melabeth's the Scourger set. Now you can change this out if you want to something like you know, to whatever fits your group or whatever. Lord Warden would be a good one to throw in here. That'd give you a lot more resistances, or even oh my gosh, I can't even think of it. But oh well. But there is other monster sets you can use. The reason I chose this one is, one, it gives you max health, and then the two-piece, when you take damage, you have a 10% chance to create a beam that steals 7,490 health over 6 seconds from the attacker. While the beam holds, you gain major vitality, increasing your healing received by 16%, and the beam breaks if you move more than 8 meters away from the target, and this effect can occur once every 6 seconds. A lot of people will say that 10% chance to apply is really bad. It actually works out really well with the way this build works, and we'll get to that when we get into the skills. Moving on to the next set, we are running Hunting's Rage. Now, a lot of people are going to say, why are you running a damage dealer set on a tank build? It's primarily for when you're not tanking. You've got a set that you can use to do other content, but it still helps out in the long run with the higher weapon crit, and that little bit of extra weapon damage can play into the build pretty well when it comes to some skills you might use. Moving on to the last and final set, we are running the Leeching plate set. Now, this is actually a really powerful set for this particular build because of the way this build works, which I'll get to when we talk about the skills. So, 2-piece adds max health, 3-piece 4% healing taken, 4-piece healing max health, and then the 5-piece. When you take damage, you summon a cloud of leeching poison under the assailant that deals poison damage every second for 5 seconds and heals you for 100% of the damage caused, and the cloud can be created once every 5 seconds. This is pretty much 100% uptime. It is up all the time, and it's really powerful. So, alright, we're going to talk about traits, enchants, traits, and armor type now. So, on the monster set, or on the bigger pieces, the head, chest, and legs, we're going to run tri-stats. We're also going to do this on the shields on the build as well. This is going to give you a lot more carrying capacity when it comes to what I mean by carrying capacity. Like, gives you just a lot more resources to work with, like health, stamina, and magicka. It makes you very versatile. And so that allows you to use a lot more resources in different pools that you might not normally use. It just makes it overall a little better. So, going over the smaller pieces, we are running 4 health enchants. This is going to give you a lot more health pool, and it's going to make you more survivable when it comes to tanking. So, really good overall in that sense. Going over the traits now on the gear, on the body pieces. So we have sturdy on the shoulder, gloves, belt, and boots. This is going to give you reduced block costs. This is going to save you a lot of resources in blocking. On the bigger pieces, we are running 2 invigorating on the head and the legs. This is going to give you more health, stamina, and magicka recovery, just by a small margin, but it does all add up in the end. And last but not least, our chest piece is a reinforced heavy armor chest piece, and this is going to give you a lot better survivability with resistances. This is actually increasing your heavy armor with resistance on the chest is actually going to give you the most out of any of the other piece on your character. So using this one reinforced actually helps a lot. Okay, now going over the armor, the way it's set up. So we have a medium helm, light belt, and we have the chest, shoulders, gloves, legs, and boots, all heavy. This is to give you a 5-1-1 setup. So you still get the Undaunted effect, you still get all the benefits of the other armor types, but mostly from the heavy armor. Getting that greater amount of resistance and the survivability and everything that you get from the heavy armor passives is going to make you more tanky. Not necessarily just a tank, but super tanky. Alright, moving on now to the jewelry, traits, and enchants. So on the rings, we're running 2 tri-rune rings. Again, this is to maximize our resource pools, our health, magic, and stamina again. And we are running 1 spell damage with 1 weapon damage enchant. This is optional. You don't have to run it like this. You can use the block cost reduction. You can use whatever you want. Just remember, the more you sacrifice to tank, the less effective you are at doing other content in the game. So you're not going to be as effective at like doing overland or doing delves or doing public dungeons or even world bosses. Effectively, you sacrifice a lot when you go like full on tank. So I don't do that. I like to have a little bit of stuff to play with to do other content, and that's why I keep my weapon and spell damage here. And then going on to the necklace, we are running an infused necklace with a tri-recovery enchant. Now, this gives us 134 extra mag recovery, health recovery, and stam recovery. And I know it seems a little overkill because we don't have a lot of health and stam recovery, but it plays into this really well in the long run, especially that mag recovery. Now, moving on to the weapons. Now, this build doesn't have to run sword and shield on both bars. You can run sword and shield and ice staff. You can run sword and shield and bow. It's really up to the person playing the build, but you'll see why I go with sword and shield on both bars. It really doesn't need a bow or an ice staff. It works out really well. So, front bar, we are using an infused sword with a life drain enchantment. This does magic damage and it restores health. The other thing that's nice about that magic damage enchant being on the infused weapon is it has a greater chance of applying the magic status effect, which will give you and anyone who hits the enemy Magicka Steel for 4 seconds. And the uptime is about a 60%. Onto the back bar, we are running a Leeching Shield, of course. Divines. Now, you don't have to run Divines here. I would suggest Sturdy on the back on this. The reason I went with Divines is to give me just a tiny bit of extra resources from the Mundus Stone. Even though it's only 9%, it's still quite a bit when you look at the amount of resources you get from the Mundus Stone flat, and then you add that 9% on top of it. It helps you in the long run. Now, Sturdy is a better option, or even going infused here if you wanted to. But remember, if you go infused and you're running an ice staff or a bow, you're going to lose a chunk of health, stamina, and magicka when you swap bars. So going with a flat one really helps. Alright. On the next weapon, we are also running an infused weapon with a Crusher enchant. Now, Crushers on sword and shield isn't really good. If you're running a bow, it's better. If you're running an ice staff, it's even, just as good. Like, bow and ice staff really allow you to keep that Crusher enchant up really well. But in the situation of this build, we're not really looking for a high uptime of Crusher. We're looking for that Crusher to be there when we need it for boss encounters, primarily. Not so much on on anything else. So, and then of course we're running the Divine Shield with the Tri-Stat enchant. Divines. Alright, so now that you guys have seen the gear, let's go ahead and talk about skills. So, first things first, make sure you unlock all your passives to things you're using primarily. So, in this case, your class, you want to have all the passives unlocked for your class. Your sword and shield, and if you are running a destruction staff and a bow, you want to get those as well. Armor, light armor, medium armor, and heavy armor, you want to get all the passives. This is going to play really well into your playability later on, especially some of the passives that you're going to get from other things that you might use. World skills, soul magic, I get the passives because I do use some of these abilities outside of that. Guild, Fighters Guild, Mages Guild, Psijic Order, and Undaunted, I do unlock all the passives as well as some of the skills that I might use more often than others. And remember, you don't have to unlock all the skills as you see I have done. It's really up to you on what you want to use and stuff, but they do come in handy in certain situations over others. Assault, Aggressive Horn, Echoing Vigor, Razor Caltrops, and Continuous Attack. This is a really good passive now because it gives you Major Gallop at all time. which increases your out of combat mount speed by 30%. And then support, reviving barrier, fish and purge, stalwart guard, and magic aid. Your racial passives, and then 2 other passives I like to suggest, or 3. Medicinal use in alchemy. This gives you a more efficient use of potions. And then with provisioning, gourmet, and connoisseur, these increase the time at which your food lasts. And that plays into your CP. Alright, so now that we've talked about the passives, let's go over the skills. So the primary skills that this build is going to be using most of the time when it's in dungeons or trials is this setup. Starting with the first ability we have on our bar, we have Pierce Armor. Now this does do a little bit of damage. It taunts the enemy for 15 seconds, and it also applies Minor Breach and Major Breach, which reduces physical and spell resistance by 2974 and 5948. With the amount of penetration we already have, this increases our damage capabilities tenfold. Really works out really well. Next ability we have is Heroic Slash. This is for ultimate Jin. So the Minor Maim also is really important. So this does physical damage to a target. It applies Minor Maim for 12 seconds, reducing their damage done by 5%, and you gain Minor Heroism, granting you 1 ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 12 seconds. Next up, we have Defensive Stance. Now, the cool thing about Defensive Stance, which is very, not used, is the, permanent buff it gives you when this is on your bar. The nice thing also is it is a damage shield, which absorbs 12,750 damage for 6 seconds, and it scales off your max health. It also reflects any harmful direct damage projectile cast at you. So if it is a bow attack, or even a mage attack or magic attack or something like that, it will deflect that damage back to the target, which is kind of nice. Doesn't do a lot of damage, but it does help. The shield equipped, while you have a sword and shield equipped though, the amount of damage you can block is increased by 10%, and the cost of blocking is reduced by 10%. That's the other reason why we want this here. DKs already get a 10% block cost reduction, and so do Templars. No other classes do, so it's good to use this on Wardens, Nightblades, Sorks, and things like that. Reducing the amount of damage you can take with Sword and Shield will save you in a huge amount. Alright, next ability we have on our bar is Dark Cloak. This is our primary heal. This we're going to keep up a lot, but it doesn't make up how this build works, and I'll get to that with the next ability. So this one, you heal for 2787 every 1 second over 8 seconds, and this scales off your max health. You also gain minor protection while it's active, reducing your damage taken by 5%. So the whole point of this skill is to heal you and protect you from incoming damage. It's really nice. I wish they would have done this with the mist form for the vampire, but they didn't. So, next ability. This is what the build is all about, really, and that is Sap Essence. So this one deals magic damage to all nearby enemies and heals you and your allies for a certain amount of damage or amount, and 20% more for each enemy hit. So each enemy hit increases the heal immensely, and it makes it super powerful for the tank because they're pretty much on the front lines. They're going to be hitting a lot of targets, and this is going to allow you to hit a lot of targets and keep those enemies, that applied. It also grants you Major Brutality and Sorcery, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 20% for 20 seconds. You don't want to spam this. You want to use this to grab the attention of trash when you're pulling mobs and stuff in dungeons and in trials, so they stay on you. It doesn't taunt, but it does damage, and it heals, and that's what gets the mob's attention, is that heal. It can heal for a lot. And that heal can draw a lot of aggro. Even though a lot of times devs say it doesn't work, it does work. Right. Excuse me for clearing my throat. Moving on to the next ability is Bolstering Darkness. This is a really good, like, CC with protection. So this applies a movement speed decrease to the enemies by 70% when cast. It does cost 200 ultimate, so forewarned. But reduces movement speed to enemies by 70%. It also grants you and your allies in the circle major protection, reducing incoming damage taken by 10%. And remember, you get 5% for your Shadow Cloak. There's another 10%. That's a 15% damage reduction for yourself. And then if you're blocking attacks, you get a lot more damage reduction. So you actually can mitigate a lot of damage with this setup. Allies can activate a hidden refresh synergy, granting them invisibility, increasing their movement speed by 70%, and healing them for 26,710 health over 4 seconds. It's a really, like, kind of a nice get out of jail free card for DPS as well, because of that invisibility and then that movement speed. Really good for dungeon and trial play. Alright. Moving on now. Next ability we have on our bar is our Twisting Path. Now, I did try this with Refreshing Path, but it's too much healing. This build already heals for an insane amount, doesn't need any more. Twisting Path, though, is a really good one. It gives your group, anyone who runs through the path, major expedition. It helps for moving through combat in areas really fast, but we're not using it for that purpose. We're using it to keep our resistance buff up, and it does deal magic damage in the area of effect. So in the 15-meter radius, it's applied. You're going to do magic damage to all enemies, and you're going to do this every second for the duration of 12. Next ability we have is Funnel Health. Now, a lot of people don't use this ability a lot on tanks. It's primarily like a healing ability or a magic damage ability, but we kind of want this on our bar because it does deal life damage, and it does heal you and 2 other nearby allies for 56% of the damage done. Every 2 seconds for 10 seconds, and it just kind of helps alleviate your healer from having to spam heals and stuff like this. This allows you to kind of help the healer out and support the group a little bit. Now remember, you're already wearing Leeching Plate, so you have a lot of incoming healing already. With the Shadow Cloak, Funnel Health. So the Funnel Health will really is for your allies. So it's there to help your allies out. Next up, we have Razor Caltrops. Now, this is how we're going to keep Major Breach up most of the time. We're not going to be keeping Major Breach applying to a lot of targets with our taunt. That's just to keep the mobs on us. This is going to allow us to keep Breach on a lot more targets to help bring them down a lot faster. So, this does do physical damage every second to the enemies who are within the circle or the radius of the Caltrops. It does reduce movement speed by 50%, and besides the damage in that, it does the Major Breach, reducing enemies' spell and physical resist by 59.48 for 4 seconds, and it stays for every tick of damage that is applied to an enemy within the circle, also reapplies the Major Breach. Next up is another buff we're going to be using quite a bit, and that is Mirage. Now, this one we're using for the extra resistance buffs. This is how you're going to get more resistances. So this one gives you major evasion and minor resolve. So it reduces the damage you take from area of effect attacks by 20%, and then it reduces your income, or also increases your physical and spell resist by 29.74. This is, again, how we're going to get our resistances up to a place where they're manageable in a dungeon and a trial. And I'll show you guys this when we get to that situation. Next ability. And a lot of people are going to say, well, you don't really need minor protection twice. This is more of a group support ability, and that is Ring of Preservation. What this does is it does apply minor protection and minor endurance, reducing damage taken by 5% and increasing stamina recovery by 15%. But it also heals people in the area by 620 every 0.5 seconds. So that it technically heals for 1240 every second, which is really good. But that minor protection helps your group with survivability, and the minor endurance can help your group, especially your stam DPS, keep their resources coming in more efficiently. And last but not least, the primary ultimate, we will be using Aggressive Horn. This one increases yours and your allies' magic and stamina by 10% for 30 seconds. It also, you and your allies also gain Major Force, increasing critical damage by 20% for 10 seconds. So overall, really good setup here on the skills. Now, I do want to show what this build looks like fully buffed before I get into CP. So if you're in a really well-optimized group, this is what your stats will look like in that situation. You can see here we have 29k max magicka, 44k health, and 28k max stamina. We have resources for days for tanking. But on top of that, we have the resources, the recoveries, and the damage to make all of our abilities work to our advantage. Plus, we have really high spell and physical penetration. What the heck is going on here, man? But we have really good spell and physical penetration. Why it was saying a different number when we logged in, or when I was showing the build in the beginning, I don't know. But this is the actual penetration values right there. Alright, now let's take a look at our champion points. So, the thing I would recommend for, that's what I'm going to show you for this build, is a tank. Now, there are other options here. That's the cool thing about the new CP system. This is just like a template setup, and there's many other ways you can set this up if you want to. So, I would suggest unlocking the yellow stars when you go up in rank, but not right away. Unlock this path here. Gilded Fingers, Fortune Favors, Wanderer, Steadfast Enchantment. These are the ones you're going to want to unlock first, and not to the maximum. You're going to want to put enough points to get them unlocked. Then you're going to want to move down this way, and you're going to want to get Rationer, Liquid Efficiency, and then you can unlock these as you progress. So Steed's Blessing, Professional Upkeep. These are really good slotted ones for when you're doing dungeons and trials. It's like the best ones for in the green tree. Moving on now to the red tree, and I'm not going to go into everything I have slotted, but Professional Upkeep, Steed's Blessing, Liquid Efficiency, and Rationer. Really good overall because this adds 30 minutes to your food and drink. This allows you to use a potion or have a 10% chance not to use a potion, but to still get its effects. Steed's Blessing gives you out of combat movement speed by 20%, and then the Professional Upkeep gives you a 50% cost in repairing your gear. Cost reduction in repairing gear. On the red tree, again, unlock the ones that are going to get you, one, the max health, because this is going to be really good for you and really important for you in the long run. Break Free, also really good for a tank, and also any of these over here. The Tireless Guardian, Fortification, Nimble Protection's pretty nice, Savage Defense, and Bashing Brutality. All really good passives to unlock on a tank. But the main ones you're going to want to get for the build itself is Boundless Vitality, Ironclad, Rejuvenation, and yes, Siphoning Spells. This is actually really powerful in this build. It restores 300 magicka per stage. Whenever you kill an enemy, you get 1500 magicka back. So it's really good, especially in trash pulls. It does allow you to spam that sap essence. Alright, Now, again, looking at these, this grants 1400 health. This grants you 1300 or 1731 armor. This grants you health, magic, and stam recovery. And this one grants you the 300 or the 1500 magicka whenever you kill an enemy. Now moving on to the blue tree. This is one you can really go hybrid craze with, which is really nice, and it really works out in the long run. But you don't have to use this particular setup if you don't want to. I use it because it works really good for the build. So, Blessed is something you're going to want to get. It only gives you 4% healing done, but that 4% does do wonders. The Eldritch Knight, increasing max magicka. Tireless Disciple, increasing stamina. And then, of course, this right here, Precision is really good because it does increase your critical chance, both spell and weapon. And even though it's so small, it can help out in the long run in a huge way. And then, of course, the Extended Might. The reason the Extended Might is, one, you get the offensive penetration, but you also get the effective, like increasing the effectiveness of your enchants applied to targets for the status effects. So that's a really important one to get. This one here just grants you 100 weapon and spell damage to your magic, flame, frost, and shock damage. And then this does the same over here for physical poison, disease, and bleed damage. And this does the same thing for the physical status effects. It might not seem like much, but when you're playing the build, you'll see why those are really important. Now, I would not suggest unlocking all this stuff right away. I would focus primarily on unlocking the ones that I have slotted. So, these are also really good as well, the Staving Death ones. These help you mitigate a lot of damage. So, and as a tank, that's your main goal, is to mitigate damage. So the 3 slotted I would take is Duelist Rebuff, or 4 slotted, sorry, and Resolve and Unassailable. Now these are going to help you mitigate a lot of damage, but we're also going to want Soothing Tide. Now Soothing Tide increases your healing done with area of effect heals. Now remember, we use one area of effect heal primarily, and that is the Sap, ability, and that's going to heal people around you and deal damage. So it's really good that we get this. We're not really worried about doing damage, like increasing our damage, but increasing that healing effect can help our group in a lot of ways. It also saves us a lot. So now, if you don't want to take this, you can take Bulwark. This is while you have a shield or frost staff equipped, you can increase your physical and spell resistance by another 1900. This is something else you can take instead of the Soothing Tide. But I prefer Soothing Tide because of the healing done. Alright, now that we've seen CP, I've shown you how the stats look when it's fully buffed. We're going to take this and we're going to do something. First, we're going to set this to veteran mode, and then we're going to go to a certain trial. I believe I tested this already. Yes, I did. But we're going to go to Hellrust Citadel. And we're going to go in on veteran mode. And I'm just going to show you the effectiveness of this build. This build is insanely powerful when it comes to survivability. Not just through blocking, but also just through the sheer amount of damage this thing can absorb due to the healing that you're doing with all of your abilities. Like, and remember, a tank doesn't have a rotation because it's situational play. It's more about using abilities and stuff to your advantage for the situation. So it's what situational play is. But your primary things you're going to be keeping up is taunt most of the time. So it's... And this is... Yes, you can ride mounts in trials.
And his army of old Yakuda claim the citadel of Helra.
So I'm just going to ride through here real quick so I can get to the first trash bowl. And this is where you're going to see this one, like how good this build really can be. And yes, I did set it to veteran mode just to show proof that this build works really well even in veteran content. So that way people aren't so leery or even afraid to play it. So we're going to run across a lot of enemies really fast. They're going to start just popping out of the ground. But that's not where we want to focus our attention. We want to focus our attention on these groups up here. So we're going to get our buff up, to buff our resistances up a little bit. We're going to get our main buff of resistances, get our Dark Cloak going, and potion. Because potions, resource management is going to be really important. And look at, I'm not even blocking, guys. Because you can out heal most of the damage that these enemies will do to you just by healing. So you want to keep up Mirage as much as you can. Funnel any heals you can keep up, any buffs, debuffs, that kind of thing. Because of the, like I said, the amount of healing this build does with the leeching plate, the sap, everything like that, it just keeps you alive, like continuously. And the more things you have out to keep you protected from incoming damage, the less damage you take, which means you can actually focus doing other things besides blocking a lot of the time, which is really nice, especially in group play. Keeping up your resources is good, but having those other things to kind of help you, really important. Now remember, I don't even have somebody here throwing out synergies. This is all just me. Now to show you it with block going as well. You see how fast you go through resources? With block, with this build you don't need to keep block up as often because like I said, you have so much healing going on. It's all about just keeping the defenses up. That's it. Like keeping all these abilities going. Keeping up the sap is really powerful too, because you can just sit here and spam it for the most part, because you have such a good recovery that you don't have to focus on it too much. But yeah, eventually you will die. We had a lot of enemies on us there, but that's just to show you, like, this build works out really well in the long run. It's really survivable because it just absorbs a ton of damage through mitigation of healing. That's how this build works. Now, there are going to be certain situations where, yes, blocking is going to be pertinent. It's going to be very important. But the idea of this build isn't just to block. It's to use other resources and tools to your advantage to give you that survivability. And it takes a lot of stress off your healer on keeping you alive, because you're almost self-sufficient at keeping yourself alive. Like, you don't need a healer very much because you can self-sustain. And that's one of the reasons why you want those higher pools in stamina and magicka, is to keep those resources there so you can use them to your advantage. Heavy attacks are your friends too. But that's pretty much it for the build, guys. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, you guys know what's coming next. If you liked the video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. And if you do subscribe, I do suggest clicking that notification bell to be notified when I post new videos. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.